Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. The coach, with Mr. Jaggers inside, came up in due time, and I took my box seat again, and arrived in London safe, but not sound, for my heart was gone. As soon as I arrived, I sent a penitential codfish and barrel of oysters to Joe, as reparation for not having gone myself, and then went on to Barnard's Inn. I found Herbert dining on cold meat, and delighted to welcome me back. Having dispatched the Avenger to the coffee house for an addition to the dinner, I felt that I must open my breast that very evening to my friend and chum. As confidence was out of the question with the Avenger in the hall, which could merely be regarded in the light of an antechamber to the keyhole, I sent him to the play. A better proof of the severity of my bondage to that taskmaster could scarcely be afforded than the degrading shifts to which I was constantly driven to find him employment. So mean is extremity that I sometimes send him to Hyde Park Corner to see what o'clock it was. Dinner done, we sitting with our feet upon the fender, I said to Herbert, "My dear Herbert, I have something very particular to tell you." "My dear Handel," he returned, "I shall esteem and respect your confidence." "It concerns myself, Herbert," said I, "and one other person." Herbert crossed his feet, looked at the fire with his head on one side, and having looked at it in vain for some time, looked at me because I didn't go on. "Herbert," said I, laying my hand upon his knee, I adore Estella." Instead of being transfixed, Herbert replied in an easy, matter-of-course way, "Exactly. Well?" "Well, Herbert, is that all you say? Well?" "What next, I mean," said Herbert. "Of course I know that." "How do you know it?" said I. "How do you know it, Handel? Why, from you." "I never told you." "Told me? You have never told me when you have got your hair cut, but I've had senses to perceive it." "You have always adored her, ever since I have known you. You brought your adoration and your portmanteau here, together, told me. Why, you have always told me all day long, when you told me your own story. You told me plainly that you began adoring her the first time you saw her, when you were very young indeed." "Very well, then," said I, to whom this was a new and not unwelcoming light. "I have never left off adoring her, and she has come back, a most beautiful and most elegant creature, and I saw her yesterday, and if I adored her before, I now doubly adore her." "Lucky for you, then, Handel," said Herbert, "that you are picked out for her and allotted to her. Without encroaching on forbidden ground, we may venture to say that there can be no doubt between ourselves of that fact. Have you any idea yet of Estella's views on the adoration question?" I shook my head gloomily. "Oh, she is thousands of miles away from me," said I. "Patience, my dear Handel. Time enough, time enough. But you have something more to say." "I am ashamed to say it," I returned, "and yet it's no worse to say it than to think it. You call me a lucky fellow. Of course I am. I was a blacksmith's boy but yesterday. I am. What shall I say I am today?" "Say a good fellow if you want a phrase," returned Herbert, smiling, and clapping his hand on the back of mine. "A good fellow, with impetuosity and hesitation, boldness and diffidence, action and dreaming, curiously mixed in him. I stopped for a moment to consider whether there really was this mixture in my character. On the whole, I by no means recognized the analyses, but thought it not worth disputing. When I ask what I am to call myself today, Herbert, I went on, I suggest what I have in my thoughts. You say I am lucky. I know I have done nothing to raise myself in life, and that fortune alone has raised me. That is being very lucky. And yet, when I think of Estella, and when don't you, Herbert threw in, with his eyes on the fire, which I thought kind and sympathetic of him. Then, my dear Herbert, I cannot tell you how dependent and uncertain I feel, and how exposed to hundreds of chances, avoiding forbidden ground as you did just now. I may still say on the constancy of one person, naming no person, all my expectations depend, and at the best, how indefinite and unsatisfactory, only to know so vaguely what they are. In saying this, I relieved my mind of what had always been there, more or less, though no doubt most since yesterday. Now, Handel, Herbert replied, in his gay, hopeful way, it seems to me that in the despondency of the tender passion, we are looking into our gift horse's mouth with a magnifying glass. Likewise, it seems to me that, concentrating our attention on the examination, we altogether overlook one of the best points of the animal. Didn't you tell me that your guardian, Mr. Jaggers, told you in the beginning that you were not endowed with expectations only? And even if he had not told you so, though, that is a very large if, I grant, could you believe that of all men in London, Mr. Jaggers is the man to hold his present relations toward you, unless he were sure of his ground. I said I could not deny that this was a strong point. I said it. People often do so in such cases, like a rather reluctant concession to truth and justice, as if I wanted to deny it. I should think it was a strong point, said Herbert, and I should think you would be puzzled to imagine a stronger. As to the rest, you must bide your guardian's time, and he must bide his client's time. You'll be 21 before you know where you are, and then perhaps you'll get some further enlightenment. At all events, you'll be near getting it, for it must come at last. What a hopeful disposition you have, said I, gratefully admiring his cheery ways. I ought to have, said Herbert, for I have not much else. I must acknowledge, by the by, that the good sense of what I have just said is not from my own, but my father's. The only remark I ever heard him make on your story was the final one. The thing is settled and done, or Mr. Jaggers would not be in it. And now, before I say anything more about my father or my father's son, and repay confidence with confidence, I want to make myself seriously disagreeable to you for a moment, positively repulsive. You won't succeed, said I. Oh, yes, I shall, said he. 1, 2, 3. And now I am in for it, Handel, my good fellow. Though he spoke in this light tone, he was very much in earnest. I have been thinking, since we have been talking with our feet on this fender, that Estella surely cannot be a condition of your inheritance, if she was never referred to you by your guardian. Am I right in so understanding what you have told me, as that he never referred to her, directly or indirectly, in any way? Never even hinted, for instance, that your patron might have views as to your marriage ultimately? Never. Now, Handel, I'm quite free from the flavor of sour grapes, upon my soul and honor, not being bound to her. Can you not detach yourself from her? I told you I should be disagreeable. I turned my head aside, form with a rush and a sweep, like the old marsh winds coming up from the sea. A feeling a feeling like that which had subdued me on the morning when I left the forge, when the mists were solemnly rising, and when I laid my hand upon the village finger post, smote upon my heart again. There was silence between us for a little while. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again.